What is going on, everybody, and welcome back to Shooting the Shit Uncensored. I'm your host, the dad bod god himself, the bald, the beard, and the fucking beautiful Piers Austin. And tonight, I've got a great guest for you, and I'm really excited to have him on. And before we get into my guest and I introduce my guest, I want to take a quick pause to thank some of those amazing sponsors that help this show free for you all and keep it free every single week. First up is healthvape.com. Now, HealthVape is your healthy vaping alternative. All of their products are no nicotine, no addictive or harmful chemicals. They help restore your energy while giving you that vital boost that you need to get through your day. And they are vitamin infused. So you can get your vitamin intake while getting your vaping happening. So if you're a nasty cigarette smoker or a nasty vapor, kick that shit with healthvape.com. Go and check them out. And also up next is sleefs.com. That's SLEEFS, sleefs.com. Now, everybody, this is your one-stop shop for all your athletic wear. They've got armbands, compression pants, compression shorts, compression socks, headbands, boots, mouth guards, and they've even got those dirty boxes that you always hear me raving about. Guys, I'm an active guy. I've got 3 kids. I work full time. I do like multiple podcasts every single week. I'm always on the go. These boxes stay fresh, they stay dry, and they've got funky designs on the front. So when that belt buckle comes undone at the end of the day, your special somebody has somewhat think to laugh on the outside of your boxes and not just on the inside, gents. I'm only having a bit of a dick joke there. I'm sorry. Bad pun. But anyway, guys, make sure you check out sleeps.com. Use that promo code MWAPOD to get a 10% discount on your final purchase. Guys, please make sure you hit that subscribe button, share, follow, like. If you're listening to us on a podcast platform, please give us a 5-star review. I appreciate it. But you've heard enough of me rambling. It's time to get on with the show. So, without further ado, here is my guest of the evening, Mr. Gavin McGavin. Sit back, relax, and enjoy, people. Boom, and we're live, pal.
Hey, that's a hell of an intro. That gets you pumped up.
It does, doesn't it, man? That's why, like, I want to have that high energy, man. So, like, started off right from the get-go, dude. But thank you for joining, man. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, this is I've done a few podcasts, but the whole live thing is new for me. So seeing the comments coming up and Kyle there with a comment saying, "Can't wait to see me FWA." That's pretty cool. It's a great little part.
Absolutely, man. This is live. This is uncensored. This is completely off the cuff, man. And that's the way that I like to have this podcast. It's great conversations, very chill conversations with people like yourself. I'm very excited to have you on. I've been wanting to have you on the show for a long, long time. And it's a pleasure to have you on. Thank you for being on tonight.
No, my absolute pleasure. I've always got a lot of time for anyone that's trying to help the pro wrestling scene in general, especially in Australia. So, and like most wrestlers, I love talking about myself. So this gives me a great opportunity to do that.
Absolutely, man. I just, before we get started, I want to take a special shout out to Mr. Joshua Tattersall, who's in hospital at the moment. Josh, my heart goes out to you, brother. I am going to come and visit you hopefully this week. Stay strong, brother. You're killing it, man. And you're a hero, bro. You beat it once and you'll beat it again, brother.
Yeah, I want to reiterate that same sentiment. Josh is someone who's reached out to me over the years through social media and whatnot. And I know he's had a pretty tough time with it. So exact same thing. I just want to wish him all the best and stay strong, mate.
And you know what? That's the thing that I love about the Australian wrestling scene, dude, is like, fans and performers, and everyone comes together as one. You know what I mean? Like fans understand they're not exactly part of the show, but they come, they cheer, they still have this connection, with the performers, and you see that after the show, you see that in the interactions. And it's great to see that it's happening from fans from all over the states that are really sort of taking notice of other products, not just the shows that are in their home states. And those other state companies are welcoming all these fans in. So it's absolutely beautiful to see.
Yeah, it's one of the highlights of the kind of the social media area that we live in now. We can be in contact with fans that we may never meet in person instantly, and they can be seeing our content and talking about our matches and those sorts of stuff, and buying our merch and all these sorts of interactions that just weren't possible 15, 20 years ago. But you say like they're not exactly part of a show, but they're a huge part of a show and a huge part of what we do, and they're our biggest advocates. The best advertising any wrestling company or wrestler can have is word of mouth, and whether that be verbal word of mouth or typed on Twitter or whatnot, it does the world of good for us.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's, when I said they're not part of the show, I meant not necessarily on the scene of the camera being spotlighted, but yeah, no, absolutely. And, it's great to see that sort of connection from the fans, and even seeing where it's like fans are respectful, like even the ones that go, okay, we know this is a work, but you know what I mean? We come and we appreciate, we fucking love this shit. Yeah. And at the end of the show, like, even if I've booed the shit out of you, like I'll still sit there and like, say, you know what I mean? Like I find that really cool.
Yeah, that's definitely my favorite sort of fan is the fan that will come along and they may really like me when I'm a heel, and they may really appreciate what I'm doing, but they'll still boo the shit out of me because they know that's what I'm going for. Whereas the ones that come and I hate using the term smark and whatnot, but the ones who will come and cheer all the heels and boo all the faces to show that I know what's going on. Fantastic. You know what's going on, so you should know better and actually help the show along rather than, fly in the face of what we're actually trying to achieve.
And you know what? I've spoken about that before, man. Like fans, certain fans trying to hijack the show, trying to get stupid chants started. And it's like, I find myself whenever like I'm not working on a show or like actually sitting in the audience of the show, I sit there. And then as soon as it happens, I'm just like, I got to get up. I'm going to the back or somewhere else. Like I can't hear this.
Like I can't speak for every pro wrestler, but whenever I've worked as heel, if I go out and there's a small pocket of the crowd cheering me, I don't appreciate it. Like that's bad. I'm like, oh shit, I'm not doing my job. If they boo the shit out of me, that's what I want. That's what I'm aiming for. If I go out there and a small pocket is cheering me, then I'm like, oh man, I'm really letting my opponent down. I'm meant to be getting him over. I'm meant to be getting him cheered. Oh no, what am I doing something wrong here? So even though they may think that I appreciate it, when I'm a heel, those boos, that is the music to my ears.
But do you think like at least getting those cheers, you at least getting a reaction, you're getting something out of them? You know what I mean? Like, or is that like your old school heel, like fuck that shit? No, you're gonna boo me.
It's like it's better than no noise for sure. But it's always about who can keep them loudest for longest. And I think also as I've gotten older and been doing this longer, it's a nice little challenge. Because if I can then turn them by the end of the match, if I can get them making the sort of noise that I want, that's showing that I'm really starting to get a really good control of my craft.
And I think like like to get legit heat in like 2022 is like to get that is like it's hitting the nail on the head, because I think everyone is so smartened up to it at times. It's like, okay, yeah, this guy's going to come out, he's the baddie. And like, you know what I mean? Like you kind of get that with certain promotions that you see where it's like even the commentators, or they're like, oh yeah, like we know this is all like whatever. And it's like, I really appreciate heels that can come out, stick to the character, and maintain that kayfabe, like an MJF or someone like that can have that respect for the business enough to be like, you know what, fuck this, I'm going to be this asshole the whole time. And you know what, people find that endearing, and they actually want to go there to boo him. Would you still call it legit?
It's such a hard one, because as you say, like the only way you can get legit heat is by being a dirtbag person. So you can still get it with your kids and whatnot, but yeah, people are so smartened up to what we do now that it's hard to get that legitimate heat unless you really go at it. But then there's things to be considered as well, like very few, if any, people in Australia are making a living off professional wrestling. So every shirt sale they get is really, really important. And if people legitimately hate you, they're not going to buy your shirts. So people start to think of it in that way as well. Like, I really want them to boo me because I'm a heel, but I want them to appreciate me because I need to sell some merch so that, I can keep paying my gym membership.
Exactly. Like, it's kind of a double-edged sword, because it's like, you want that merch money, but like as well, you want to be creative and be, a heel, or try dipping your toe in being a heel.
Yeah, I think it's because it's such a different art form. I mean, it's not like Josh Brolin goes on Twitter as Thanos, you know what I mean? And then people yell at him, like, he plays that character and then he puts that character away, and then, oh, I really loved your work in that and that sort of stuff. But people are going to boo him while they're in the cinema. Whereas for us, because it's this live thing, people can't see the distinction between the wrestler and the performance. So if you are one thing in the ring, then that must be you in real life and whatnot. And I find that that's kind of made it a little bit trickier in terms of getting that heat, because a lot of tropes and heel characteristics that you could portray in a movie or a song or a play or a TV show, you can't do in pro wrestling. They just wouldn't fly. You can't have those character traits because it's almost too real. Like, you know what I mean? Whereas you can have, like, terrible example, I'm not saying that someone should have this gimmick, but you can watch a movie where the bad guys are the Nazis and they get their comeuppance. You cannot have a Nazi pro wrestler character in 2022. You just can't, nor should you. But it's just one of those examples where in that platform, oh yeah, that's a person playing a character and we hate them, but then that person is not that person. They're just playing that character. Whereas in a wrestling match, you can't do that. And it's this weird sort of area where you can be a bad guy, but don't do anything that's actually really bad that we would really hate you for, even if you're just pretending to do those things. So it's a tricky one.
Do you think it's because, like, since the beginning of pro wrestling, everyone in pro wrestling has tried to convince fans that it's a complete shoot, right? So it's pulled the wool over the eyes. So do you think it's like that's also part of it? Like, there's that level of, I mean, like, put kayfabe aside, like, I don't know, like, you know where I'm going with this?
It's hard because you can't have it both ways. Either it's 100% real and then you hate me as a real life person for what I did in the ring, or it's a complete work and then you can just forget that what I did because I'm not that real life person. I hate killing the magic of it, but I also understand why there are certain things that we just can't do as those characters, because most of the crowd is smart up to it, but there is a kid in the front row that might think that I actually mean the things I say or mean the things that I do. But also it's good because bad guys have evolved throughout pop culture. I mean, the rise of the anti-hero during the mid-90s, through Stone Cold and then NWO and through other social media and other pop culture and that sort of stuff has really made it tricky. Whereas up until, the early 90s and whatnot, you could be just the most cheesy, over the top heel, and you'd be a white meat baby face, and it's so very clear. Whereas then once we got to the mid 90s and then there was the anti-hero, then it became hard to. There is no such thing as a bad guy characteristic. Like Stone Cold Steve Austin wore all black, flipped off the crowd, beat people up, drank beer at work, and that's a good guy. Like it's so hard, and then it's very, very tricky to. There's no one characteristic or wrestling move or gesture or whatnot that's a good guy or a bad guy thing. It's all in how you portray it. Whereas it used to be this is good guy characteristics. He wears the white hat. This is bad guy. He wears the black hat. It's very clear. But it's so open to interpretation now that being someone that everyone hates, really hard to do.
And, for you, like, being a seasoned vet, do you prefer to be a heel over a face?
They present different challenges. I definitely, having done both for long periods of time, really gives me an appreciation of the other. And it also helps you be a more rounded performer. Like when I first started wrestling, for the first 7 years, I was a face. And then when I went heel for 4 or 5 years, it helped me realize what I need in a face when I'm wrestling them. And now that I'm a face again, I'm really aware of what I need in a heel, because I remember being face and wrestling against heels that were out there, and during the heat, they were getting laughs from the crowd and they were getting pops for their moves. And I'm like, well, it's not really helping me, because I'm not getting any sympathy here. We're not actually creating any tension in this thing. It's kind of like I use the example of the Phantom Menace. Like, Darth Maul, cool character, worst heel, shit heel. He had the best look, he had the best moves, and people were upset when he died. Like, oh, we want more of this guy. Like, we had these two white meat baby faces that like everyone was supposed to support. Why? Darth Maul looks cooler, does cooler moves. Like, why would you boo that guy? We're so upset when he died. Like, that's why they ended up bringing him back as a half man, half robot, because the crowd wanted to see him more often. A bad guy, when he dies in the movie, people should be like, thank God, get rid of that guy.
And, that's why, like, I see, like, you see in this generation now, like, the cool heels. You know what I mean? The heels that come out, they do the cool shit. They do the whole boom, right? And, all that sort of stuff that the crowd can go along with. And, like, I love all forms of wrestling. Like, I love today's wrestling. I love wrestling from 30 years ago, everything like that. Sure. But when I see stuff like that, I go, like, you're kind of stealing the shine from your face, no? Like,
it's hard. It really depends on, like, as I said, your flavor of wrestling. I mean, the dichotomy at the moment really is WWE and AEW. So AEW is very much more, with the exception of MJF, I don't really know anyone that fully commits to being a heel on that show. Like, the Young Bucks aren't heels. Adam Cole isn't a heel. Like, there literally gives you no reason to boo them whatsoever. Like, he comes out and gives you a chance to do the big Adam Cole baby sing along. Like, that's not getting heat any way, shape, or form. People cheer when he wins. But that's what that crowd wants. So he gives it to them. That works. Whereas in WWE, you have people that actually try, and it's hard because people, if someone does their job well as a heel, people will go, oh, he's doing his job really well as a heel. So it's very hard to get that sort of response. But yeah, it's horses for courses. It depends on what sort of crowd you're working in front of. Like, what they say, the customer's always right. So you've got to give them what they're going to get the most out of. Yeah.
And, for you, like, being in wrestling, like, what was, like, some of the main, like, from your character, who were some of your main influences that you not borrowed from, but sort of seeked inspiration from to put your character together?
That's a tricky one. Because character-wise, honestly, I don't know if there were too many wrestlers that I took from. There were some really good lessons I learned. I remember Edge, I can't remember when he said it, but he talked about the best way to get heat in a promo is to tell the audience a truth that they don't want to hear. If I go out there and just make up a whole bunch of shit, then that's not going to strike a chord with the crowd. They're not going to get upset about that. If I go out there and tell them something that's actually true, but they don't want to hear it, that's going to get heat. So when I go out there and say, oh, you're booing me, but I'm the guy holding the champion, and I'm the first person to ever hold it, and I'm the longest reigning champion. And didn't I just win Wrestler of the Year? So I'm better than the guy that you're like. And like, yes, that's true, but just like, tell them a truth that you want to hear. Don't go out there and say, I'm the best wrestler in the universe. Really? Then why am I wrestling in Perth, Western Australia instead of at WrestleMania? Like, there's got to be truth to what you're saying. Otherwise, people aren't going to buy into it. Like, if I come out there and there's this massive trope in wrestling that I'm hearing every second week, or probably more like twice a week, where people are cutting these promos for these matches that either have little to no build, or maybe there even is a build, and they go, I'm going to come out and I'm going to kick your teeth down your throat. I'll tell you what, I haven't seen a tooth come out of a head in quite a while. If you say you're going to go out there and kick someone's teeth down their throat, you better actually kick them in the face at least once. Whereas you're not. Like, you can say you're going to beat the shit out of them, you're going to kick their ass, you're going to make them tap out, you're going to embarrass them, sure. But don't tell me you're going to leave them in a bloody mess or end their career if you're just going to have a standard match and beat them with a roll-up. Like, don't tell me you're going to kick my teeth down my throat if you're someone who doesn't even throw kicks in your arsenal.
Yeah, because it makes sense, and it gives it the believability as well. Because, like, if you're a fan base of that promotion, that performer, and they say, "Well, hang on a second, like, kick the teeth down the throat," like, You know what I mean? Like, you don't
Yeah.
strike. You know what I mean? Like, what's going on there? And that's where it comes down to, man. I think it's the finer details and also being the specifics of promo to be able to know how to get the best reaction from your audience. Like, I think Booker T even said the only difference for his ring entrance when he would walk down as a babyface or when he'd walk down as a heel, if he's a babyface, he'd smile.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it. There's such subtle little differences. Like the difference between the real wrestler Gavin McGavin as heel and face is just a little bit more humility as a face, really. I'm still banging on about the same thing, talking about all the records I've got and the history of making and the records I've broken and titles I've taken and all that sort of stuff. I'm still talking about the exact same thing. I'm just doing it with a little bit more humility. And it's the same as anything. There's such a fine line between arrogance and confidence. And if you can flip from one side to the other, that's your difference. That's your heel and face. My motivations remain the same. And that's the big thing. The motivations need to be realistic and they need to be believable and they need people to be able to buy into them. And you need to care. You need to care about the result of your match. Otherwise, no one else is going to. I think my friends and I have this conversation sometimes about what maybe was the final nail in, I mean, he's had a great career, but the final nail in Dolph Ziggler's coffin in terms of not going all the way to the top was when he came out and several times he cut a promo and said, I don't care about winning and losing. I just want to steal the show. And then, oh, okay. Well, if that's the case, sweet. You can lose to everyone, man. It doesn't matter because it doesn't bother you. So why should it bother us? Like, you need to care about the wins and losses. Like, they matter and they don't matter, but you need to at least care because if I don't care about winning, why on earth would the person paying money to watch me get invested in this match?
Yeah, I mean, well, it comes down to even, when you see boxing and MMA fighters talking shit, like you don't see someone come out there and go, well, there's a good chance I'm going to get my ass kicked tonight, folks. You know what I mean? Because you know what I mean? Like you've got to build to that excitement. You've got to see that competitive nature in it to make it, want to people buy in.
Yeah. But I mean, there are some people that in the MMA world and boxing world, or MMA world more specifically in UFC, have managed to kind of make a career out of that, of losing. But they say, I'm just going to try and get that match of the night bonus, baby. Like I'm going to go out there, I'm going to swing and I'm going to bang. Maybe I get caught and I get knocked out and I lose, but I'm going to get more money for the match of the night. So like, you're going to get an exciting fight with me. And there are people like that, they'll win one, lose one, win one, lose one, and they'll never pick up the title, but they'll constantly get put on the show by Dana White because he knows, well, that's going to be an exciting fight.
Yeah, because that's the thing. It's like they know that. Well, look at Diego Sanchez. He was there for like fucking 15 years, man. Like even to a point, it's like they're just rolling him out in a wheelchair at one stage.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. It's at that level, it's like has that competitive nature, has that drive to do it. In pro wrestling today, do you see that same drive and passion with a lot of guys in Australian wrestling?
I think the ones at the top, definitely. The people at the top, that they want to be the best at their game and they take it seriously and they treat it seriously and they take pride in the championships that they win and the tournaments they enter and those sorts of things. And they conduct themselves like true professionals. And that's what sets them above from the other guys or guys and girls or wrestlers that just, I'm just going to go out there and try and get plenty of gifts on Twitter. Like that's what I'm going to do. That's how I'm going to get over. That's how I'm going to make my name. That's how I'm going to get booked because people saw me do this one cool move, as opposed to the people that I'm going to go out there and I'm going to give the show something unique and I'm going to give the fans moments that they'll remember and I'm going to be valuable to a promoter outside of just, a couple of gifts here and there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think as well now seeing a lot of, talent, in the Australian scene, which is like traveling around and now like after COVID's sort of opened everything, well, now opened up from all the lockdowns and stuff like that, we're starting to see, people sort of coming from interstate and, people from New South Wales going over to Melbourne, Perth, etc., Adelaide. And, yourself, you're coming down to FWA in July, I believe. But, you've wrestled for PWA a couple of times, I think on the Coliseum show, if I'm correct.
I haven't been on Coliseum. I was announced for the 2020 Coliseum and then COVID. So as far as I'm aware, if Coliseum and when Coliseum happens again, I'm still a part of that tournament, but I don't know. I'm hoping so. So yeah, that's been one of my big goals for a long time, is to be part of Coliseum, because it's fantastic. It's everything I love about pro wrestling. I love tournaments. I love one night or one weekend tournaments. They're fantastic. But my hope is that still goes ahead and that I'll be a part of that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But as far as, EPW, that's where home is, correct?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. So EPW, are you coaching there as well?
Yep. I coach 3 nights a week down at the EPW School of Pro Wrestling. So on Monday nights, I take the beginners. On Friday nights, I have it open to all, and I run what's called Chain Gang, and we just do chain wrestling and submissions. And then on Sundays, I run, depending on who turns up, but for a long time, it's been tag team wrestling. So it's a tag team Sundays where I focus specifically on tag team mechanics, tag team psychology, all the things that make it different, because they're almost two completely different sports in terms of singles and tag wrestling. And just because you can do the mechanics and the moves and there's 2 of you in the ring, it doesn't make you a tag team. So that's my big focus. So there's 3 days a week I'm at the school coaching, and then on Wednesdays I go there to be coached by the combination of Damien Slater, Marcus Pitt, and now as well Mikey Broderick comes down some those sessions sometime as well. So I'm at the school 4 days a week still, 14, 15 years in.
Still love it as much as you did when you started?
Yeah, probably even more so. It's I can't get enough of it, probably to the detriment of other things in my life. If I miss a session because of either I've got to stay late at work, or I've got an injury or something like that. Even if I've got an injury, I usually just go down and listen, or I'll maybe go down and if I'm injured, I can still go down and coach from the sidelines and that sort of stuff. But it's hard because I want to get in there and I want to run the drills with the guys and that sort of stuff. But yeah, it's almost to a detriment. I'm so passionate about pro wrestling, and the older I get, the more I realize, okay, well, my time in this is finite, and it's one of those chill down the spine moments when I think, I'm gonna have to actually stop wrestling at some stage, which is just awful. But I know that once I do, I'm not going to stop coaching. I'm not going to stop being involved. Like I see myself. I'll have some role on the shows. I'll be a manager, or I'll be a commentator, or something. I have to be around it. I spent the first 23 years of my life not being in pro wrestling, and I don't want to spend any more of it without pro wrestling in my life.
How did you find when you first transitioned to be a coach? Like, did you find that, because I know like that can be challenging at time when you actually got to sort of show people, this probably people that don't know what they're doing to start off with, like a beginner class. How did you find the transition from going to be like, okay, professional wrestler, now I'm going to be professional wrestling trainer?
It kind of happened organically, because when I first started training, I was going 4 or 5 days a week, and I was under the learning tree of all these amazing trainers, and probably the one that trained me the most was David Storm. And he's just a fantastic coach in terms of the way that he describes things and explains things and whatnot. And I've always been really, really curious. And we were a couple of years in, and I just told him, I just put him aside. I think we're probably the last place he wanted to have the conversation. But I think we might have actually, I think we're at a strip club for someone's bucks party, and a few too many drinks in. I just pulled him aside and said, look, I appreciate that you're teaching me how to be a wrestler and that sort of stuff, but I just want to learn everything there is about this business. I want to know how to put a card together. I want to know how to coach. I want to know how to do all these sorts of things. So like anything and any job that there is, I want to know more. And at training, I'd see something happen in the ring, and I wasn't arrogant enough to call out someone else and say, you made that mistake. I'd sort of go to Dave and go, so with that there, would he have been better off doing this? Or, do you think that I thought that she did that really, really well? Is that something and he sort of picked up on the fact that I was looking at it on a more critical eye. And the other thing that happened around about that time in my life is I went back to university and I got my teaching degree. So I'm a trained educator. I've been a primary school teacher this is my 11th year as a primary school teacher now. Wow. He knew that I've got that education background, and he just sort of got me to start assisting him, and almost like a protege assistant coach. And then it was in 2013, we moved school locations, and we had a new intake of trainees, which is that amazing class that Julian Ward talked about, with himself and Taylor King and Logan Gray and Jordan Bishop and Cowboy Billy Williams and all these people, and Liam Mendel. And he put myself and Jay Taylor at the time in charge of that class. And Jay Taylor is another fantastic wrestler from over here. And we sort of started coaching together. And then a few things came up with Jay and he couldn't make it anymore. So I sort of took over by myself. And I just absolutely loved it. I think having the teaching background and the teaching pedagogy and that sort of stuff has definitely made coaching a lot easier. And one thing that I've realized both through my school teaching and through teaching wrestling is that the best way to master something is to teach it to someone else. Like I am much better at long division now than I was in school because I have to actually be able to explain it. To the level of understanding you need of how to put on a headlock, it goes right through the roof if you need to tell someone the how and why of what you're doing, to teach it to someone else. Because there are some guys out there who are phenomenal wrestlers, but we'll go, oh, how did you just do that? I don't know. I just do it. I just tell my body to do it and I do it. Whereas the good coaches are the ones who can break it down and tell you exactly how they do it. So it's that metacognition of thinking about your thinking and how did you do it. And I'm lucky that I, had the university education in how to get that across to people, and also fantastic coaches as well. But I love it. It really is a very, very fulfilling part because I coach 3 days a week and I wrestle once a month. So I'm doing a lot more coaching than I am wrestling. And it's just the best because, I teach mainly upper school. So kids are just about to go in high school and they're a bit too cool for school and maybe aren't that keen on learning maths or maybe aren't that keen on learning how to write an essay for 6 hours. And I'm getting a lot of attitude and preteen lip and that sort of stuff. And then I can get my car, drive up to the factory, open the doors, and there is a group of adults with beaming faces who want to learn, who want to hear, who are grateful for your advice. And it's just the best. It restores my faith in teaching as a profession because I get a captive audience who actually wants to hear what I've got to say.
Yeah, my wife is a primary school teacher as well. So, I've definitely heard the stories about that. And, I think it as well, like, to be able to, go and coach, a few days a week, you yourself, did you notice that you became a much more polished performer because, you were paying more attention to the finer details when teaching the beginners, like the basics, like headlock or a takedown or a back bump, for example?
100%. Just even things like I would teach something and they'd say, why do you do it that way? And I'd have to go, why do I do it that way? Maybe I shouldn't. And I'd rethink about how I would do things and just getting the reps in as well. Like I said, that first class that I had, I was so blessed to have such amazing caliber of wrestlers that have gone on. And like, I take great pride in the fact that 2 out of that class have gone on to become EPW champion and 1 has just gone on to become the coastal champion as well. It's just really, really awesome. But by the time we were sort of 6 months in, I trained them, I think 2 or 3 days a week. It was just me and them. And every night finished with fight night. So the last half an hour would be quarantined to have tag matches, single matches, triple threat matches. And we would just go balls to the wall, full out. And, you throw shit at the wall and see what sticks and see what works and whatnot. And just getting those reps in, it was, the crowd's not there for that part. But in terms of the mechanics, there's nothing better than, match simulation and actually getting in there and getting to do it. And, possibly filled up my bump card a little bit early, but it really, really helped a long way. But yeah, I think I definitely have gained a much better grasp on wrestling by going into teaching it. And shortly after becoming a coach is when I really started to sort of pick up and carve a path of my own as a wrestler on EPW shows and around Australia as well.
Yeah. And as far as, being, now when you first got into wrestling, was there any misconceptions that you had about professional wrestling before when you were breaking in? Like, what was your mindset coming in? Because I know a lot of people probably have different sort of thought processes when they're first coming in. Some of them like, oh, this is going to be cool. I'm going to go in there. I'm going to be the Rock in 12 months. You know what I mean? Like, where was your head at, coming into it?
It was... Luckily, I was unlucky and luckily. So I wish I had found out about EPW when I was 16 and started when I was 16. I wish that had happened. But unfortunately, I didn't find out about it until I was 23. So, I watched your episode with Marcus Pitt and he said by the time he was 20, he was over in, America training and Julian Ward, by the time he was 20, he was over training with Lance Storm, and I hadn't even started. I didn't even know. I'd never even set foot inside a gym at that age. And so luckily, the benefit of that is 16-year-old me was a bit of a douchebag, so I probably would have come in there and got my head kicked in, or I would have just rubbed everyone the wrong way and whatnot. Whereas luckily I came in as a 23-year-old. I was a bit more, I'd been to university already for something else, and I'd lived a little bit in the world, and definitely not a mature adult at 23, but at least I had a little bit more sense to just sort of like, yep, yes, sir, no, sir, respectful and that sort of stuff. And so I definitely came in better, probably more equipped and more humble to learn than perhaps sometimes you get with a 16-year-old who has, their eye on WrestleMania 3 weeks into their training. I think I was always sort of realistic, particularly because back then when I first started training in 2008, there weren't a lot of 5'9", 60-kilo guys on TV or globally known. So I was kind of, my goal that I set myself, honestly, when I first started training was I want to have one match in front of a live crowd. And then if I really allowed myself to dream big, I'm like, man, if I could wrestle in another state, that would be incredible. Imagine flying on a plane and getting to wrestle somewhere else. Like, that was just unheard of to me, because when I did my tryout, not an open day, a 2-day tryout, which was absolutely brutal, I remember David Storm saying to everyone at the end, he said, look, a lot of you aren't going to make this. And some of you that do, you may get to wrestle a show or wrestle a match in front of your friends at training, and that might be as far as you ever get. And if you want to keep doing this, you have to be okay with that knowledge. Like, there aren't, WWE is not knocking down the doors for Australians. Flash forward now, they are. Australians are, I can now say to my trainees when they start, whatever you want this to be, if you want this to be your weekend footy club and you want to wrestle a couple of matches, you can be. If you want to, go and wrestle for a living for some of the biggest companies in the world, the pathway's there. It's been forged. Like, Australians can do this. It's proven now that Australians can compete at the very, very top level. So when I first came in, I still had that sort of thing where there's no such thing as wrestling in Australia. Like, I didn't know that professional wrestling existed in Australia. I thought it happens in America. There used to be 2 companies in the world. There was WCW and WWE. WCW won away, so now there's literally just WWE. And I know there's Japanese wrestling, and I know there's Mexican wrestling, but that was about as much as I knew about it. Like, I was a huge WWE fan, and I watched everything that they had, and I went back and watched old WCW and that sort of stuff, and ECW and whatnot. But I was just kind of like, you know what, because there mustn't be much of a very big scene in Australia, otherwise I would have heard about it. I'll go there, I'll do my first few months, because I'd heard that, you pay your $3,000, you get 3 months training. Okay, you are a wrestler, off you go get your bookings. So I'll find out how to do the basics, and then, if I want to do it, I'll go off into America, and then I'll learn from there. But really, really quickly, I realized, holy shit, we got a world-class company here just at the independent level. Like, it blew me away the first time I went and saw APW. There was a cage being lowered from the ceiling, and there was pyro, and there was smoke machines, and like a real wrestling ring, because I'd seen, footage of backyarders with like mats taped on the ground and chairs as the corner posts and that sort of thing. And I was just absolutely blown away by the high quality and just the fact that how good the guys at the top of the card were. I'm like, man, you're going to have to dedicate your life just to get to there. Like, I never, ever thought I would get to EPW champion status, because these guys are incredible. They're absolutely phenomenal. And again, I was probably limiting myself too much based on, I thought I started too late and I was too small and that sort of stuff. And no one wants to see someone my size wrestle. Like, I'll be comedy relief at best. So I probably, my regret in wrestling, I think, is that I put too many limitations on myself too early. Like, I probably could have started putting my hand up for interstate bookings 2 or 3 years in, but I waited a really, really long time. So I started behind the curve. Like, it wasn't until I was probably close to 30 that I started actually really getting myself out and about, which in hindsight it's kind of, I think it's been detrimental to my career, because I think it's going pretty well now. Like, I'm starting to get a bit more recognition. I'm starting to get those in-state bookings and whatnot, but I'm 37. So, they say that wrestlers peak in their mid-30s, and maybe I'm hoping not, but maybe I'm on that downward slope now. And I'm really hoping that maybe starting later means that my peak will be late as well. So I'd like to think that I haven't peaked yet. And I like to think that I can do this for a lot longer still to go.
See, I reckon like wrestlers probably peak at around 40. like 40 and 40, 45 with a lot of them. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I think at that stage of being a performer, you really sort of start to get it. And you look at when Bubba Ray Dudley was in TNA and went and did that main event run as Bully Ray.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The level of performer he was at there compared to where he was at 10 years prior, you compare matches or just promos and stuff like that, and it's just like different levels of performer that you can see there. And I think that at that stage, he was probably at his peak, and he was probably like 43.
I think you might be right, actually, because I think maybe 20 years ago, 35 was the peak, because the schedules that they wrestled and the extracurricular activities that they took part in would just wear their body down by the time they got to mid-30s. Like Stone Cold retired before he was even 40, like, and just was injuries and that sort of stuff. Whereas now you're probably right, like the guys are a lot kinder to their bodies. They're a lot more health conscious. They're a lot better with their rehab and recovery and that sort of stuff. So now guys are having longer careers. And even if I just look at how I am physically as a 37-year-old compared to my dad when he was 37, like we probably would look like father and son now. Like I remember my dad like, oh, that's so old at 37, whereas I still feel very, very young for 37 now. I think late 30s now is a much healthier, fitter, more active than it was 20 years ago, 30 years ago, and especially in professional wrestling, because I think people are a lot more aware of diet and nutrition and taking care of yourself and avoiding those pitfalls that can shorten your career.
Yeah, and I think as well, like everyone's a lot more knowledgeable now, you know, and obviously with the internet and stuff like that, you've got access at your fingertips. Whereas like even, you know, the foods and people smoking back in the 80s, right? Like that was, you know, that was still kind of like, it wasn't really out that, you know, it was out that it was bad for you, but people still very often did it. Like a majority of the public probably did. Whereas like now it's a different sort of way that the people are living their lives. So I think we're definitely seeing a difference.
And I think also for the most part, wrestlers are a lot more highly trained now. Like I said, 20, 30 years ago, you paid your money, you went and did your 3 months training, and then you never set foot in a training school ever again. You just went out and you wrestled. Like someone like William Regal, incredible wrestler, has about 3 months formal training to his name. Like, and then he just learned by wrestling. And I think that's one of the reasons why Australians are so prolific on the world stage these days, is because in Australia, we treat it like a sport. So as I said, I've been wrestling I started training in 2008. So 14 years I've been training, and I still go 4 days a week. Whereas a lot of the independent wrestlers in America, they go and they do their 3 months training, and then they never train again. They just perfect it by wrestling every weekend. Whereas could you imagine if like an AFL player and an NRL player, I played at the junior level. Now that I'm signed by the big team, I'll just play on the weekends. I'm not going to go to training. I know how to kick. I know how to pass. Like, it wouldn't happen. Whereas here, training is a huge thing in Australia. And I'm not sure how many other countries around the world have training schools where there are guys 15, 20 years in still going to training multiple times a week. Like, it's no accident that Robbie Eagles is such an amazing wrestler. He's been doing this for a very long time, and he still goes to training several days a week. Like, he's not, oh, I'm done training, I've done learning. No, he still goes to training every week when he's not flying around the world, of course. So I think that is one of the reasons why Australians are so good and why we're starting to dominate across multiple companies.
For yourself, you know, is your goal to go and have a shot in WWE, AEW, or to go overseas and get a full-time contract at this stage?
I think I'm realistic. If I started now in the business, then 100% that would have been my goal. But I think I'm realistic. As I said, I'm 37 now. I'm 5'9". I'm about 68 and 69 kilos. I know that doesn't mean a lot. So that straight away, those three things, WWE is not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. So that one's off the table completely. I know that other companies are hiring people older now and of different sizes and whatnot. I will be mad at myself if I never give it at least a little bit of a crack. And by a little bit of a crack, I mean, I've got to go overseas and I've got to wrestle in other countries. And just, it's on a bucket list as well. I've never wrestled internationally before. I had bookings lined up on both the East Coast and the West Coast of America in early 2020. Then COVID hit and they both fell into a heap. So that is definitely on my bucket list, is to go and to wrestle professionally somewhere, even if it's just on the indies. And, if I can maybe get noticed there, but I'm as I said, I'm realistic. I've been doing this a long time now. I've got a house and I've got a mortgage now. I've got, a permanent full-time teaching job. So I'd have to sort of give that not give that away, but put that in jeopardy to do it. I wish I was 10 years younger. I wish I'd started 10 years later. But my main goal is to make Australian wrestling, and in particular EPW, as big as it possibly can be. I want to get it to the stage where you don't have to leave this country to work full-time as a wrestler. That would be my dream. Actually, I'll tell you this, my dream, and here's one that I think is a really strong dream, and maybe not. They keep talking about, they're going to open a performance center in Australia. And if they open a performance center in Australia, my dream job, honestly, would be to be a coach at the Australian Performance Center. I think that would be fantastic. And I think that I could probably offer a lot more at my age and at my experience level as a coach than I could as a wrestler. I mean, there are fantastic coaches all across the world and across Australia. There are 5 guys in EPW right now that I think should be coaching on an international level for sure. So, maybe one day that might be a way to get a paycheck from WWE, but I definitely don't think that you're going to be seeing Gavin McGavin on a WrestleMania or a SummerSlam or anything like that. And I do kick myself that I didn't back myself earlier on, but that's the difference. I mean, I've got no one to blame but myself for that. The guys that want it, like the guys like Mike and Shane, who just threw their life at it and uprooted it at a young age, moved to another country, and they went to Japan and that sort of stuff and slept on dojo floors. Like, they got the success that they deserve because they worked for it. I haven't put that level of work in. I try and put the level of work in to be the best I can be at this level and to make sure that my students are the best they can be at this level. But yeah, probably didn't back myself enough at a young enough age. I think that now, unfortunately, that ship has probably sailed for that. But hey, I'd love to, I don't know, maybe get on PWG Bowler one year, or maybe, I'd just go and do a little tour and wrestle a couple of spot shows in Japan, or, I don't know, go and have a match for Ring of Honor or something like that. Those are the more goals that I think are realistic, and just say, I did it that one time. I went and worked for that company, or, I've got strong connections with Dave Marquez over in Championship Wrestling from Hollywood and a few other companies that, get on TV in America. Maybe if I can get one match on American TV. But I've always kind of been that way, rather than 6 goals ahead. I'll just go to this next goal. And that next goal is I want to wrestle overseas. And from there, once I achieve that, maybe I can do this, or maybe I can do that. So we'll see how we go.
When you said, like, you didn't back yourself, was it that you were in your own head back then when you were younger? Was it like, people around you saying, oh, you're too small, you're too this, you're too that? Or was it just all in your own head?
I don't think there wasn't anyone in EPW that told me that I was too small or put limitations on me. I think that my entire life I've been told that I'm too small. So even just when I decided that I wanted to start wrestling, none of my friends and family were like, but you're little. Don't wrestlers have to be big? You'll get hurt. And I think, just not having enough confidence in myself. And also I think that I was so enamored by wrestling when I started that I put so many people on a pedestal. Like, I didn't think that I had anything to offer the wider Australian community of wrestling, because I thought, I'm not as good as the people that are interstate and whatnot. And then I went interstate and I started, I can hang with these guys and girls. Like, I'm actually at a pretty decent level, so I think I can do this. But then 2020, I was gung ho. Like, I'm gonna have a real good crack at this. All of a sudden, there I'm 34 instead of 37. I've got a bit of time out my sleeve now, but obviously everything came to a bit of a grinding halt. But you see the people that don't make that excuse for themselves, like Shaz McKenzie, took herself to America and wrestled a shitload and gave herself every opportunity to get seen by as many people as possible. And I have no doubt she's going to go do it again. It's just I wish I had the bravery just to make that jump, but it's, you've got to kind of balance those things where I spent a decade trying to get a permanent teaching job, and I've only just gotten that in the last 6 months. So if I had have said, I'm going to go to America for 6 months, I may have come back and been unemployed. Whereas now I've got a little bit more freedom, and I've got long service coming up, so I could go over America for 3 months and still keep getting paid for my normal job. So I've got that financial security. So we'll see what happens, but I'm hesitant to make any plans in case the whole world just shuts down again. But next goal, get myself overseas, and then once I've achieved that one, see what happens next.
It was a scary time, like having the whole world shut down. Like, it was something that we'd never seen in our lifetime before, and probably never see in our lifetime again. Fingers crossed. For you, like, having that sort of just taken away from you, was it just like, was it just gut wrenching? Like, were you like, oh, okay, we'll just wait and see how this is? Like, were you freaking out about it, or were you just like?
It was hard. Like, I think what hurt me more is that we had to close our training school, and for the first time in 14 years, I couldn't go and physically train. Like, I couldn't go and lock up with someone and wrestle, because I'd just go stir crazy if I can't do that. So that's why myself and a few of the other trainers literally started doing online training 3 times a week. We just still needed to keep doing something. We were very lucky in WA that, it was a matter of, honestly, weeks, maybe 2 months that we had to take off training before we could get back into it. I was disappointed, of course, but I saw a lot more people lose a lot more stuff than me losing a couple of bookings in America. So I couldn't be too upset about it. Like, the Australians that got signed to Ring of Honor right beforehand, and then all of a sudden everything's locked down, and then a few years later they lose those contracts without ever actually being able to wrestle for it. Like, my heart goes out to those guys and girls, because that's super rough. Like, and other people, I know that it eventually worked out for them, but a couple of people that were about to get signed to NXT, that got put on hold because of COVID and whatnot. So that was tough to see for those people that I'm close with and friends and whatnot, and see those big opportunities and wonder, oh no, I hope they're still going to get them. Like, realistically, I was going on a holiday to America, and I had 2 bookings lined up, but it wasn't like I lost some huge, massive opportunity. And I don't know, I guess I probably didn't take it seriously enough in how long it would take before I'd be able to get overseas again. Like, they were saying, oh, it'll be a couple of years before this happens again. I was like, oh, surely not a couple of years, but here we are. So it was tough. It was a bitter pill to swallow, but when I think about it logically, like, I lost so little compared to other people, so I couldn't get too upset about it. And I was so lucky that in WA we were some of the first wrestling to go back in front of live crowds in the world. We had it so much better than everyone else, so definitely can't complain.
Yeah. And EPW, one of the things you mentioned earlier was the production and how what they do on shows. And I've spoken to David Storm a couple of times, and for me, like, I'd love to see EPW shows. I definitely have to make my way to WA for a show sometime soon. But do you think EPW will go towards more of a streaming service now, like a Fight TV or something along those lines, to get more eyes on the product?
Man, I would love that. I would absolutely love that. The difficulty is that it is so expensive to do well. And it's hard. Like, we could do it on the cheap, but it'll be shit. And we just, like, David Storm is famous for saying, don't be shit. So if you're going to do something, do it well. Like, we could have started doing it already, but it probably would be a blotchy feed. It probably wouldn't have very good graphics. It would probably be pretty, one camera. And I'm sure people are like, that's fine, give it to us. But we want to make sure if we're going to do it, we're going to do it right. The other thing that we've got to take into consideration is that, like, I lap up all the live streams that happen. So I'd always watch PWA and Nui Pro and MCW and that sort of stuff. And anything that I can get live, I watch, or I watch on demand straight after. But I'm in the great position. If they start a show at 8 p.m., it's 6 p.m. for me over here. So I can watch that, and then I can still got some of my night left. Particularly in summer, we're 3 hours behind. So if we start a show at 7 p.m., you guys are watching that at 10 p.m. at night. Like, that's hard. So straight away, the East Coast crowd, we're probably not going to get as many people watching. whereas, the East Coast can get a lot of WA people watching. I think that there's definitely a market for it for sure. I really, really, really hope that it happens. It's just, we need to find a cost-effective way to do it because it's in the thousands of dollars, the quotes that we've got, thousands of dollars. And, we could just jump headlong in and hope that, the people that are subscribing are going to cover that. But, we don't want to be in a stage where we can't pay our guys or we're losing money for the company for the sake of live streaming. Our biggest concern, first and foremost, is the people live in the building, the live product. That's what we want to pump our money into, and that's what we want to pump up and get as good as we possibly can. We know we've got a truly world-class product. I heard Marcus Pitt and possibly Julian Ward say the same thing to you. I believe that EPW and some other companies around Australia can compete with any independent company in the world. And we've been around longer than some. We're in our 21st year. 21 years we've been going. Like that's crazy. Like I think we might predate TNA ever so slightly, and I think we're around about the same age of Ring of Honor. Like we've been around for a long time, and I would love for people to be able to see everything that we do. I mean, we've got all our back catalog, 20 years worth of back catalog on Vimeo and whatnot. But I really do hope that by the time I'm done, and even I'll stick around after I'm done in ring, that we find a way that is effective and efficient and cost effective to do live streaming, because I do think that is really what's going to take us to the next level.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I also agree that I think if you're going to do it, you do it right. You don't want to do it where it's going to be, one camera, shoddy graphics, botchy feed. Like you want to do, and, David Storm definitely seems like he's one of those guys, as you said, if he's going to do something, do it right the first time around. You know what I mean? So I think it's only a matter of time for you guys, to be honest. I think it's a logical next step. But again, you guys have been killing it without doing that for so long. It's hard to sort of go against what's been working for 21 years, Yeah,
it's like I just want as many people as possible to see EPW, because the first thing that they say when they see it the first time is like, oh wow, I didn't realize it was at this level. Like we've got some just incredible talent on our shows. Like to have, on your hometown roster, Marcus Pitt and Damien Slater and David Storm, and even guys like Bobby Marshall have been doing this for a really, really long time. And now we've got Mikey Broderick and like Julian Ward coming up and Taylor King coming up. And we've got all these just amazing wrestlers. They always put the tweet out every now and then, oh, what would be your card if there was an Australian super show? And I'm like, well, we've got it. we've got it. And it's the curse of being in WA. WA stands for wait a while, where we've got this amazing talent pool, but unfortunately they're not getting to be seen everywhere. One, because of the live streaming, and two, because Marcus Pitt, Damien Slater should be wrestling every weekend across this country. But to fly them in is about 4 or 5 times as much as flying someone else. If you're a Sydney company and you want a wrestler, you can get a flight for probably under $100 for a Melbourne guy, or you can pay sometimes $400, $500, $600 to get them from WA. No company's making $1 million profits. No company's rolling in cash in Australia at this level. So that's a big overhead to bring someone over. So it's kind of a curse being in WA that it's very, very hard to break into the whole Australian market. And the same thing coming the other way. That's why there's not a lot of interstaters that come our way, because it's a lot of cash to lay out. And as great as it is to have those guys and girls come over and wrestle for us, as I said, it's a big financial outlay. And also, when we've got a roster as deep as we do, like, who do you bench to bring someone over? Like, do you sit Marcus Pitt on the bench? Like, I don't think so.
Yeah, exactly. It makes it hard, especially when you've got such a solid crew working there, and within WA, there are a handful of other promotions. Do you ever try and, go work for New Horizon Pro, or you just specifically only work for EPW?
I specifically only work for EPW. Julian Ward talked about this. I was one of the guys that I was dead against it when they opened the floodgates and let everyone work for everyone else. I definitely see both sides of it now. I think for me, as Julian said, it's a very, very small state. There's a very small pool of wrestling fans. And now I remember a couple of years ago, there were 56 wrestling shows for the year, 56 wrestling events for the year. So more than one a week. And that's so much wrestling. That's great if you're a wrestler and you want to get a lot of reps in. But I've always been that guy that I'd rather wrestle once a month in front of 500 than wrestle 5 times a month in front of 100. You know what I mean? And it's hard. There are lots of people that are wrestling other places, and I have trainees ask me, should I go elsewhere and whatnot? And I'm not going to stop anyone from doing anything else. And all I say to them is just make sure that there's something in it for you. I'm a firm believer that you get better by wrestling people that are better than you. And we've got the best guys here. Like, if I go elsewhere, I'm not going to get to wrestle Marcus Pitts, and I'm not going to get to wrestle the Damian Slayers. Like, I get to wrestle the best in the country where I am now. And also, I think that a little bit of exclusivity is good as well. I mean, like, if you want to see Gavin McGavin, you've got to come to EPW. I used to be a real hard ass, and I used to get disappointed in my trainees if they go and wrestle for somewhere else because we did all this hard work and that sort of stuff. But like, maybe that's where I fell down by not taking more bookings and going elsewhere and getting my name out there more and whatnot. I don't know. I think it got to the point where they did, when I first started wrestling, they did reach out a few times, and I sort of politely declined and said, no, thank you. I'm an EPW guy. And I think it just got to the point where they stopped asking. I mean, I try and get as much wrestling done as I can for EPW. Like, we run the Royal Show every year, and we run 8 days in a row with 3 to 4 sessions a day. So I will go there and I will wrestle 4 matches a day, 8 days in a row. There have been years where I've wrestled 50 matches in a year for EPW because, I'm wrestling 25 matches in a week. So I'll go there and wrestle as much as I can. And we have our showcases, which are trainee shows, and I'll wrestle on all of those so I can wrestle a bunch of the new young guys and give them some experience to work with. And just because I can't sit on the bench, I've got to be wrestling. I don't know if you'd see Gavin McGavin outside of EPW in Perth, but I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I mean, I think going and getting those reps against other people in other companies, I think that's probably more for the guys that are coming up and need to get those extra reps in and whatnot. Like, I still go to training 4 days a week, so I'm spending 10 hours a week working on wrestling. If they're deciding to go to wrestle somewhere else, they're spending 10, 15 minutes a week working on wrestling. If they're going to training, you know what I mean?
100%. That's where it's at. But it is that time for 60 Seconds with Piers. We've explained how this works to Gavin before the show started. If anyone's tuning in for the first time, what 60 Seconds with Piers is, I'm going to ask a bunch of random fucking questions to Gavin. He's got 60 seconds to answer as many of these bitches as we can get in 60 seconds. When you're ready, sir, you let me know and I'll start the clock.
Fire when ready.
Okay. Would you rather toe-length fingers or finger-length toes?
Oh, I think that I'd rather finger-length toes because I can hide those in boots, and if I've got weird fingers, people will see it. And I probably won't be able to wrestle as well.
If you had to describe yourself in 3 words, what would they be?
3 words. Pedantic. Pedantic. I would say I'm going to be a little bit arrogant here. I think I'm a little bit charismatic and goofy for sure.
If you could make any changes, regardless of how big or small, to professional wrestling, what would it be?
I would make heels get heat.
Stop. What is the last book you read?
Oh, the last book I read is actually Ken Dunlop's autobiography about his wrestling career in Australia.
Great fucking book. If you came with a warning label, what would it say?
Don't ask my opinion unless you want it.
Would you rather own your own boat or own your own plane?
Scared of heights, so I'm going to go own my own boat.
And last one, in 5 minutes' time, you are being shipped to outer space. What 2 personal belongings do you take with you, excluding human beings?
2 personal belongings. My PlayStation 5 and a TV to play it on.
There you go. That has been 60 seconds with Piers. Gavin McGavin smashing it out. That 1 hour has gone by fast. And as I say quite a few times, when an hour goes by fast, you know it's been great conversation. Gavin, I'd love to get you back on for a part 2. I think it's been absolutely amazing.
Yes,
and I definitely want to try and tee that up. But thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate having you on.
Yeah, you're absolutely welcome. And I saw, like, as we were chatting, like, and I kept droning on, there were like questions and stuff coming up along the bottom. If you guys want me to answer those questions, hit me up on social media or whatnot. I'm more than happy to answer them for you. I'm sorry I didn't get to them.
You know what? If you want, we'll run them quick right now before we end it up. But the first question we have here is, what is your dream match?
Oh, dream match. I reckon I would have loved to have wrestled William Regal in his prime. If a current day wrestler, probably John Gresham.
John Gresham. Yeah, you know what? He's one of those guys who's just absolutely insane. Like, he looks so small, but he's like a pit bull. And he
I just love that style of wrestling. Technical wrestling, hold for hold wrestling. That's wrestling to me. I absolutely love it. Like, you can fake being athletic and you can like throw a bunch of dives and that sort of stuff. You can't fake being good at technical wrestling. You can't smoke and mirrors that. You either are or you aren't. Like, that's
it's
legit.
Very raw, isn't
it? Yeah. That's the essence of what we do, in my opinion.
That's why, like, I love a good chain wrestling match. Like, if it's done like by 2 absolute amazing technicians, like a John Grisham and like a Jay Lethal, you know, or like a Jess Troy and, you know, like a Jack Bonzer and stuff like that. You know, you just see such amazing technique. And it's definitely there. But look,
I was going to say, there's 2 that you mentioned there in terms of in Australia dream matches versus Jess Troy and another one against Jack Bonzer. I think Jack Bonzer and I need to get in the ring and decide who is the best technical wrestler in Australia.
There you go. You're throwing down the challenge to the big man in PWA. So I'll make sure I have to clip that and post that up so he sees it. But, dude, again, thank you so much for being on it. It's been an absolute pleasure. We will definitely get that part 2 teed up in the next couple of weeks. But, guys, also make sure you check out our sponsors, healthvape.com and sleeps.com. Use promo code MWAPOD to save 10% on your final purchase. Please like, share, subscribe, hit the bell to stay notified if you're watching on YouTube. If you are tuning in on a podcast platform, please give me a 5-star review. I appreciate it. It does a lot for us. It does a lot for the algorithm, and it helps us reach more people, and it allows us to do more things like this and have more amazing conversations. So, guys, start clicking. But till next time, we'll see you soon. Take care. All the best. Peace.